Do you know what to do if somebody gets injured while you're out on the trail? Hi, everybody, and I'm Rob, and this is Storm Crew Overland, where we talk about going on adventures, road tripping, camping, and just generally getting out and enjoying life. On this week's episode, we're going to start the first of a multi-part series on overland slash wilderness slash adventure first aid. And this is not restricted just to those things. These skills will help you at home. I mean, just on the road, if you come across an accident at your workplace, anything like that, these skills will translate. And just to kind of give you an idea of my background and why I feel like I can talk about this, when I was active duty, I was, at the time, the Air Force's first aid program was called Self Aid Buddy Care. It was pretty basic, but I was a Self Aid Buddy Care instructor for years. I also went to the Army's combat lifesaver training, did that. And then after I got out of the Air Force and started working as a DoD civilian, I started becoming an SABC instructor. Again, that's the Self Aid Buddy Care. Sorry, military acronyms. We're bad about that. And then eventually, the entire DoD has transferred over to a new thing. I'll end up referring to it as TCCC. It's Tactical Combat Casualty Care, and it's very similar to the combat lifesaver training I went through. Now everybody gets the same training, which is great. And I'm going to take that kind of framework and sort of try to. Hey, hang on a second. How did Angry Rob? What are you doing here? And how did you get on my tablet? Don't worry about that. Maybe your password should be something besides Rob Rocks. Just here to remind you, you probably should give the viewers kind of a disclaimer. All right, and don't screw this up. Well, thanks, but I guess he does kind of have a point. Um, I am not an EMT. I am not a doctor. This is not professional medical training or advice. This is me taking knowledge that I've picked up over the years through being a very basic level, first aid kind of trainer, and taking those skills, trying to pass them along to y'all. This is not, like I said, this is not there's no certification with any of this. There's no guarantees on any of this. This is just me trying to, educational purposes only, pass knowledge on. So like I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted there, uh, most of what I'm going to be telling y'all is based on Tactical Combat Casualty Care. It is a system that's been developed by medical professionals. They kind of looked at the most common preventable causes of death that have occurred on the battlefield, but a lot of these kind of injuries in this framework work for outside of combat as well. Like I said, workplace, car wrecks, in your home, stuff like that. So we're going to go over a couple of phases of TCCC, and then we'll start getting into how we kind of assess the patient and the situation and start doing things from there. And that's probably all we'll get to in this video. We'll start the actual doing things probably in the next video, and then we'll kind of have several from there as we kind of work our way down the list that you're going to learn about in just a little bit. Okay, I mentioned that we're going to talk about phases of care. And we're going to have three phases. And the way it works is normally in TCCC, the first phase is called care under fire. And that's when you're in a firefight, things are still happening, things are still dangerous. And this is easy to translate to our normal kind of civilian adventure hobby activities. We're going to call it care under threat. So if there's something bad still happening, whatever caused someone to get injured, if that situation is still happening, whether it's a car wreck, if things are still moving around or if there's traffic going around, your first thing to do may not be immediately rush to start trying to help that person. It may be moving them or trying to have someone stop traffic or having someone call 911. It might be just making sure nothing else happens. If there's a rollover accident and the person's hurt, you might want to make sure the car is shut off, there's no gas leaking. If someone catches on fire, you might want to make sure the fire is contained. If someone cuts themselves with a chainsaw trying to clear a trail, make sure the chainsaw is turned off first. The biggest thing is you want to kind of stop any possible injuries from happening before you start dealing with the whole situation. From there, you'll move into what we're going to call field care. You're in the woods, you're out camping, you're on the side of a trail, you're on the side of a road because it's a car accident, whatever it is. You're not in a hospital, you're not in a clinic, you're out in the field somehow, somewhere. And this is where you can actually start doing more to treat the person that's wounded or injured or whatever it is. You're going to actually start doing things. What's important to remember, though, is this is kind of a fluid thing. You can be in a situation where you're like, okay, something bad happened, somebody got hurt, it was still dangerous, everything's calmed down now, for whatever reason, things have calmed down, you're going to start treating them, but then something else happens. You come upon you're driving down the road and you see there's a guy in front of you on a motorcycle and he crashes. Well, you get over it, you turn the bike off, you start checking the guy out, there's no traffic, everything's fine, you're dealing with the guy. Well, then for some reason, a lot of traffic picks up. Well, you may need to make sure that y'all are kind of switch back to care under threat and go, okay, are we safe? Can I actually focus on what I'm doing here? Is there anything else that's going to cause him to get hurt more or me to get hurt? Because if he's hurt and then I get hurt, who's going to help? So you may have to all of a sudden move over to the shoulder more, or have someone out trying to stop traffic, or make sure your hazards are on. You may switch back and forth between care under threat and field care, just depending on what the situation is. And then finally, after all that, you're going to have evac. And this is where you are taking the person that's been injured and you are passing them off to someone more qualified than you or me. You're giving them to an EMT. You're giving them to a medic. You called 911 and the ambulance is here now. Whatever it is, you're passing them off. But for the most part, your work is done. In evac care, most of what you're going to be doing is communicating to these medical professionals that you're passing them on to what you know. You're going to be telling them how they got hurt, what injuries or signs or symptoms you've noticed, and letting them know what you've done to try to help. It is important to remember that when this person, you've done things and you've taken care of this person this long and you've kept them alive long enough to get to actual medical care. You want to make sure whoever the medical provider is you get them to has the best chance to keep them alive, to get them healthy, to get them better. So they need to know what you've done, especially if we're talking about things, major injuries that involve things like tourniquets or quick clot. Medical professionals have to treat those things certain ways, so they need to know. Okay, now that we've talked about the 3 phases of care, we're going to move into the patient assessment. And this is the things you're going to be looking for and treating first. Now, this whole order is based on what is most likely to stop this person from living the fastest. If they've got a major bleed going on and they stub their toe, you're not going to spend your time worried about their stubbed toe. You're going to fix the major bleed first. And it's all kind of common sense, but it's a good way to break it down for you. And it uses an acronym. The acronym is MARCH. It starts with the M for massive bleeding. And when we say massive bleeding, we are talking massive. We're talking arterial spraying blood. Nasty, scary stuff that if you've never seen it, will freak you out. We're talking blood spurting from the person at the same rate as their heartbeat. So if they're injured in a stressful situation, their heart rate's probably up. They're going to be squirting blood out like a super soaker. The only time I've actually seen arterial blood spray in person, I nicked a little bitty spot on my pinky finger, and it just hit the last bit of artery there. And we're talking a small little, I've got less than a centimeter scar on my finger. But I remember as a kid walking down the hall and watching it spray 3 feet onto the wall. So we're talking lots of blood. And with this, if for some reason, whether it's a chainsaw accident or someone was changing a tire on the trail and the vehicle fell, or even just a regular a rollover, an accident or something, if you're dealing with any kind of amputation where a limb or a digit or whatever is actually removed, just go ahead and assume you're dealing with massive bleeding, and this is what you need to treat first. When I say first, you hit the wrong artery, if it's on yourself, if you hit the right artery on me, I will be passed out in 60 seconds and probably dead in 90. So you've got the rest of your life to figure out how to fix this. It's kind of a morbid way to think about it, but it was something they used to drill in our heads. These are the things you have to do first, and you have to do it fast. It's got to get done quick. And like I said, with a few further videos, we will go into how to actually treat these things. But this is just trying to break down the acronym for you. So that was M. That's massive bleeding. Next is airway. We're going to be looking at, is their airway open? We've made sure they're not going to bleed to death. And believe it or not, if you're talking about life or death, your body can hold your breath longer than it would take for you to bleed to death. So we got to deal with the bleed to death part first. Once we stop that massive bleeding that would cause someone to be unalive, we're going to move on to the breathing kind of stuff. We're going to start with airway. And then this, we're making sure their airway is open. Like I said, we'll go into the actual specifics in the further videos. So once we got their airway good, we've made sure they're not going to bleed to death. We've made sure they have the ability to breathe. Their airway is open. Then we're going to move on to R. And the R is respiration. So we're going to make sure that they actually are breathing. You're going to do a lot of look, listen, feel. Try to get in there and make sure. You're trying to make sure they're breathing. And this is tricky because no one ever gets hurt in the perfect environment. If someone gets hurt, you're on a trail and it might be dark, it might be windy. You're trying to see if this person's breathing. Well, they might have a coat on, so you can't see if their chest is moving down. You want to put your cheek down by their face to see if you can feel their breath. Well, it might be windy out, so you can't tell. You want to put your ear by their face to see if you can hear them. Well, there may be people panicking. It may be loud for whatever reason. You may not be able to hear. So you have all these different ways that you're going to try to look, listen, feel to make sure they're breathing. And then if they're not, there's things you can do from there, things to make sure they keep breathing. So once we've made sure, not bleeding to death, airways open, they have the ability to breathe, respiration, make sure they are breathing, then we move on to circulation. And this is, we've gotten the big things out of the way at this point. They're not chances are there's not an immediate threat of them not being around anymore. So we're starting to move into the more kind of common things. For circulation, you're going to look for smaller bleeds that might need to be treated. You're going to go back and double check anything you treated when it came to the massive bleeding. You basically want to make sure that blood is going round and around and air is going in and out, and those two things don't kind of mix up. All right, so and I'm repeating things a lot to try to help get this acronym drilled into your head. So we've made sure they're not bleeding to death with the M. We've moved on to airway, made sure they have the ability to breathe. We went to our R and made sure they were respirating. And we've checked their circulation to make sure everything's still moving around like it's supposed to. And finally, we're going to move on to H. I've heard this different ways. Officially now in TCCC, H is for hypothermia. This is a weird one. Now, I've also heard of head to toe, treat as you go, and you're just kind of catching all the little things that you may not have had time to worry about yet. But when it comes to hypothermia, something that blew my mind when I first learned it can be 95 degrees outside. And if someone's lost enough blood, they can become hypothermic. Because blood is how your body regulates heat and how it moves heat around. And you don't have enough, if you've lost enough blood, your body's supposed to be 98.6. If it's anything less than that, your body's going to start cooling off more than it should. So you need to treat for that. And like I said, we'll go into the specifics later. And so that's kind of your march. Massive bleeding, airway, respiration, circulation, and hypothermia. Once you've gone through all those, and like I said, we'll have future videos, then we'll move on to some other random how to treat other things that might be a little less life-threatening. We'll probably have a whole video on just regular kind of first aid, Band-Aids, or little things, or how do you treat blisters, or how do you treat a sprain. burns, things like that. So that's really gonna all we're gonna get into for this week's video. Like I said, this was just really breaking down what we're gonna be doing for the next couple of videos, giving you an idea, giving you that introduction into the whole March system: massive bleeding, airway, respiration, circulation, hypertension, hopefully, or hypothermia. Hopefully you're saying it with me and you've got it already locked in your head at this point. But if not, I'm sure we'll go over it in the future videos. Well, uh, so that's all we have for this week. Like I said, this is just setting everything up. If you are watching this on YouTube, realize we also release the audio as a podcast. You can find it wherever good podcasts are found. Just search Stormcrow Overland. If you're watching this as a podcast, you can find the video on YouTube. Search Stormcrow Overland. You can find us on Instagram at Stormcrow Overland. And finally, you can also reach me via email if you want to, stormcrowoverland@gmail.com. I always appreciate any kind of like, comment, follow, subscribe, message, anything like that. If you've got questions, if I didn't explain something good enough, if you want to know what I think about something or anything like that, feel free, reach out to me on any of those things. I will do my best to get back to you. I generally can reply to everything because I don't get a ton of comments, but I will get back to you and do the best I can. I really appreciate all those things. And hey, we're over 250 subscribers on YouTube, so that was awesome. Appreciate it, guys. That's really all I have for you this week. Just remember that sometimes you have to go out and get lost and hopefully not do any of this stuff we're going to be learning about before you can find yourself. Thanks for watching.